Rewind time tens of millions of years, and you won't recognize our planet. No cities, no people, no familiar animals, not even flowers and grass as we know them. The Earth is ruled by creatures the likes of which will never be seen again, from tiny feathered hunters to giants the size of multi-story buildings. Their era lasted an unimaginably long time, over 150 million years of uninterrupted dominance, and ended, essentially, in a single, terrible day. Today, we will walk this entire journey from beginning to end. We will see how the first dinosaurs rose from the ashes of history's greatest catastrophe, how they conquered land, sky, and sea, how they cared for their young and hunted in packs, and how one day, in a single instant, it all collapsed. This is not a story of destruction, but of those who ruled the Earth the longest. But to understand the origins of dinosaurs, we need to go back even further, to the moment when life on the planet nearly ended entirely. About 252 million years ago, Earth was struck by a catastrophe that scientists call the greatest extinction in its history. It occurred at the boundary between two eras, the Permian and Triassic periods. Paleontologists estimate that approximately 96% of all marine species and about 70% of terrestrial species disappeared. The oceans emptied, reefs crumbled, forests thinned, and almost all familiar life simply vanished from the face of the planet. The biosphere didn't perish entirely, but it lost almost all its diversity, dwindling to a handful of survivors. It was beyond this point that a new era began, the Mesozoic, a time destined to become the Age of Dinosaurs. Why did almost all life become extinct? There was likely no single cause, and that's the main difficulty. Scientists increasingly believe that several disasters converged. The main trigger is believed to be the monstrous volcanic eruptions in what is now Siberia. Their scale is difficult to imagine. Molten lava flooded an area larger than an entire continent, a place called the Siberian Traps. Colossal volumes of carbon dioxide and toxic sulfur compounds were released into the air. A powerful greenhouse effect began. The planet heated up, the oceans warmed and became acidic, and almost no oxygen remained in the water. Marine life suffocated, and food chains collapsed one after another. Thus, the convenient myth of a single cause is shattered by reality. Volcanoes, heat, poisoned oceans, and a lack of oxygen all at once destroyed the planet. Now imagine what the Earth looked like in those distant times. All land was gathered into a single gigantic continent called Pangaea, surrounded by a single shared ocean. There was no Europe, no Asia, no Americas, just one continuous continent from pole to pole. With all the land mass fused together, almost no moisture from the ocean penetrated, and the heart of Pangaea became a scorching, endless desert. The climate was hot and dry, and the air was noticeably depleted of oxygen than it is today. Breathing it would have been as difficult for humans as high in the mountains. Flowers didn't yet exist. The land was covered in conifers, ferns, and cycads, and the seas were dominated by primitive algae. It was a harsh, half-empty world of survivors, but it was here that the future was maturing. Among those who managed to survive the Great Dying was an inconspicuous group of reptiles, the archosaurs. They were inconspicuous in appearance, the size of a dog or a small bird, but it was from this branch that crocodiles, flying lizards, and the dinosaurs themselves would later descend. Surviving alongside them was another group, the mammal-like reptiles, which were already developing the rudiments of fur and, perhaps, warm blood. It was they who would one day give rise to mammals, and therefore, ultimately, to us. And here's what's important to understand. Dinosaurs weren't the strongest on the planet from the start. They simply happened to be among the lucky ones to survive and were able to take advantage of the devastated world. The story of their dominance is largely a story of luck, not of initial superiority. A new era began with the Triassic period, which began immediately after the catastrophe. The Earth slowly recovered, the climate remained hot, but oxygen levels gradually increased, paving the way for more active animals. It was then, about 230 million years ago, that the first true dinosaurs appeared. One of the oldest is considered to be Eoraptor, whose skeleton was found in Argentina. It was a small, bipedal creature, about a meter long, light, agile, and, judging by its teeth, omnivorous. Slightly larger was Herrerasaurus, also found in South America, a true predator. But don't be too quick to imagine them as the rulers of the world. In the Triassic, dinosaurs played a supporting role, sharing the land tightly with crocodile relatives and mammal-like reptiles. No one then suspected that these inconspicuous creatures were the future. What was their secret advantage? The answer, surprisingly, lies in the structure of their legs. Most reptiles have legs splayed wide apart, causing their bodies to almost drag along the ground when walking, and the movement itself takes a great deal of energy. Dinosaurs, however, had legs positioned directly under their bodies, like columns, just like a bird or a horse. This posture gave them stability, speed, and, most importantly, endurance. They could move longer while expending less energy. In a world where every sip of water and every scrap of food was fought for, this proved to be a decisive advantage. In essence, the upright stance became the very discovery that would later allow dinosaurs to grow to colossal sizes while maintaining mobility. And then fate intervened again. About 201 million years ago, another mass extinction struck the planet, this time at the Triassic-Jurassic boundary. It wiped out many of the dinosaurs' competitors, large relatives of crocodiles, giant amphibians, and entire lineages of mammal-like reptiles. And once again, the familiar story repeated itself. Some disappeared, while others got a chance. This time, it was the dinosaurs who got the lucky ticket. Why they survived remains unclear. Perhaps it was their mobility, their metabolism, or perhaps just luck. But after this point, their true rise began. Dozens of niches became vacant, and dinosaurs poured into them, never to relinquish their dominance. Thus began the Jurassic period, a time of true giants. The climate moderated, dry deserts gave way to humid, warm forests, vegetation became abundant, and along with it, so did the creatures that fed on it. It was in the Jurassic that sauropods appeared, enormous herbivorous dinosaurs on 4 legs, with colossal necks, powerful bodies, and counterweight tails. Diplodocus stretched up to 30 meters in length, while Brachiosaurus held its neck upright, like a giraffe, grazing the treetops. How these giants even walked without breaking under their own weight is still not entirely clear. The secret lies in part in the fact that their bones were hollow inside, yet incredibly strong, and their hearts were enormous, designed to pump blood up their long necks. They had almost no teeth for chewing. They tore off leaves and swallowed them whole, and fermentation and bacteria in their gigantic stomach helped them digest them, just like modern cows. But where a giant grazes, sooner or later, someone will appear who wants to dine on it. The main predator of the Jurassic was Allosaurus, a lizard up to 9 meters long with powerful jaws and sharp claws. It was lighter and probably more agile than the later Tyrannosaurus rex, and some finds suggest that Allosaurus sometimes hunted together. Scientists have repeatedly found the bones of several predators mixed in with the remains of their enormous prey, although it's possible that they simply scavenged together. Other theropods, both large and very small, hunted alongside Allosaurus. And it was among these inconspicuous small predators that one of the most astonishing lineages in the entire history of life developed. The fact is, some small predatory dinosaurs took a very unique path. Rather than pursuing size, they became lighter, faster, and more intelligent, and feathers began to appear on their bodies. Initially, these feathers weren't used for flight at all, but for warmth and, perhaps, for mating displays. The most famous of these creatures was Archaeopteryx, which lived about 150 million years ago, and whose footprints were found in Germany. It had wings with real feathers, but also a toothy mouth and a long, bony tail, like a reptile's. It couldn't yet fly truly like a modern bird, but it could flit from branch to branch. And here's the conclusion that revolutionized science. Birds descended from dinosaurs, or more precisely, from these small, feathered predators. This means dinosaurs didn't go extinct completely. Some of them are still alive today. Now's the time to ask the first question. Have you ever seriously considered that the common sparrow outside your window is, scientifically speaking, a true dinosaur, only adapted for flight? Let me know in the comments if this idea surprises you. While giants roamed the forests, our distant ancestors, the first mammals, were already living in the shadows, burrows, and dense grass. They were tiny, nocturnal, and cautious, the size of a shrew or a small animal. They had no desire for power. Their only goal was to survive and avoid being preyed upon. They fed on insects, roots, and fruits, basking in their own warmth and hiding from all larger creatures. It seemed a pitiful role, forever in the background, but it was precisely this modesty and caution that would save them when a new disaster befell the planet one day. The giants would fall, and the inconspicuous creatures from their burrows would emerge, ready to inherit the desolate world. However, that was still a long, long way off. The Jurassic was followed by the longest stretch of the dinosaur era, the Cretaceous period, which lasted nearly 80 million years. It was then that the dinosaur world reached the peak of its diversity. The single continent finally broke apart. The continents drifted further apart, and new seas and straits formed between them. Each isolated landmass became a separate evolutionary laboratory with its own species, which is why the Cretaceous saw the emergence of so many different dinosaurs unseen in the Jurassic. A quiet but momentous revolution also occurred during this time. The eternal conifers and ferns were replaced by the first flowering plants, bringing with them flowers, fruits, and seeds in protective shells. This changed not only the appearance of the planet, but also the entire menu of herbivores, pushing them to new adaptations. And the herbivores weren't long in coming. Some of the most successful were the hadrosaurs, duck-billed dinosaurs that lived in large herds and developed veritable plant-grinding mouths, where hundreds of teeth ground up tough foliage. Many of them sported bizarre bony crests on their heads, which may have acted as blowpipes, allowing them to call to one another with booming, low sounds. Others took the armored route, the ankylosaurs, veritable living tanks, encased in bony carapace and sporting a heavy club at the end of their tails. They didn't run from predators, but met them with a crushing blow. Still others, horned dinosaurs like Triceratops, grew long horns and a huge bony frill. Most likely they lived in herds and used their horns not only against enemies, but also in tournaments with each other, just like today's deer or buffalo. But the true icon of the Cretaceous period, of course, was Tyrannosaurus rex. It appeared at the very end of the era, about 68 million years ago, in what is now North America, and was arguably the pinnacle of predatory perfection. It reached 13 meters in length, weighed over 7 tons, and had a bite force unmatched by any land animal in history. Its jaws could crush bone and smash shells. Its thick, serrated dagger-like teeth didn't so much cut as tear and crush. And here's where it's time to dispel a few myths. Tyrannosaurus rex was far from a clumsy, slow-witted creature. It had a large brain, a keen sense of smell, and excellent eyesight, and it could track prey by scent from afar. Its comically short legs were actually very muscular and clearly had a purpose. This was not a dumb giant, but a hunting machine honed over millions of years of evolution. Tyrannosaurus was formidable, but not alone in its majesty. Other corners of the planet held their own monsters. North Africa was home to Spinosaurus, which was even longer than Tyrannosaurus, reaching up to 15 meters, though noticeably lighter. It had an elongated crocodile-like snout with conical teeth and hunted primarily fish, being at home both on land and in water. On its back, Spinosaurus sported a tall, sail-like crest made of elongated vertebral processes. Its purpose is still debated. Perhaps it was for cooling the body, or perhaps to impress rivals and females. So the common notion that Tyrannosaurus was the greatest predator of all time is not entirely accurate. It had plenty of formidable competitors. The light, fast, and intelligent predators known from movies, the so-called raptors, have earned special fame. It's worth clarifying here, as cinema has generated considerable confusion around them. Famous films depicting the velociraptor as a Deinonychus, a much larger animal than the real velociraptor. Deinonychus, whose name means terrible claw, lived in the early Cretaceous, grew up to 3 meters tall, and sported a huge sickle-shaped claw on its second foot. It wasn't just a hunter, but a true tactician, and judging by discoveries, these predators attacked larger prey in groups. The real velociraptor, on the other hand, was smaller but covered in feathers and very intelligent, essentially almost a bird, but with a predatory nature. Both belonged to the feathered theropods, the very same ones that formed the basis of birds. So when we say raptor, we're essentially talking about an evolutionary line that already has 1 foot in the sky. And here's a second question for you. Which dinosaur have you been a fan of since childhood? Who's your favorite? The fearsome Tyrannosaurus, the armored Ankylosaurus, or the cunning feathered hunter? Share your thoughts in the comments. The more scientists learn about dinosaurs, the more the old image of dumb, cold lizards crumbles. Many of them, especially predatory theropods, had surprisingly large brains, and the closest relatives of birds had a brain-to-body ratio almost like that of modern birds. This implies advanced vision, hearing, memory, and quick reactions, and perhaps even the ability to learn from experience. Dinosaurs were long thought to be cold-blooded, but now there's growing evidence that at least some were warm-blooded or something in between. Otherwise, it's difficult to explain their activity and rapid growth. Many had excellent vision, sometimes even in color, and the sense of smell of a Tyrannosaurus rex rivaled that of a vulture. Dinosaurs also cared for their young. Fossilized nests have been found where the female stood frozen, covering her clutch like a hen, and entire colonies of nests where the young were cared for long periods. Caring, teaching, protecting children, everything that we are accustomed to considering as a trait of mammals, they also had. While dinosaurs shared the land, their close relatives, the flying lizards or pterosaurs, took over the skies. They took to the air in the Triassic, long before birds, and became the first true vertebrate flyers. The earliest of these were small, like the long-tailed Rhamphorhynchus, which caught insects mid-flight. Later, short-tailed pterodactyls appeared, sporting a variety of crests on their heads. The crowning achievement of this line was Quetzalcoatlus, the largest flyer in Earth's history. Its wingspan reached nearly 11 meters, like that of a small airplane. Scientists still debate how such a colossus took off, but it certainly excelled at gliding, riding thermals. Interestingly, many pterosaurs were covered in soft down, suggesting that, like birds, they were likely warm-blooded. No less astonishing life also flourished in the seas. A third great power ruled there: marine reptiles, who had returned from land to the water. The first were the ichthyosaurs, strikingly similar in appearance to modern dolphins, with streamlined bodies and powerful tails. Some had enormous eyes the size of dinner plates, used to spot prey in the dim depths. Plesiosaurs swam nearby, built entirely differently: a broad body, 4 flippers, and an incredibly long neck. The neck of the Elasmosaurus alone stretched 6 meters, almost half its entire body length, and at the very end of the Cretaceous, the seas were taken over by mosasaurs, flexible giants up to 17 meters long, related to modern monitor lizards and snakes. Their jaws, with flexible bones, allowed them to swallow large prey whole, and a more dangerous predator was simply unmatched in the waters of that time. And here's a fact that surprises many. Not all dinosaurs basked in the tropics. Some species lived above the Arctic Circle, where even in that warm era, winters were long, dark, and frosty. In what is now Alaska, Nanuqsaurus, a dwarf relative of Tyrannosaurus, was found, measuring only 6 meters in length. Its reduced size was likely an adaptation to the harsh north, where food was not always plentiful, and it was more advantageous to be frugal. To survive in such latitudes, dinosaurs needed warm blood, feathers to retain heat, keen senses, and a good memory to navigate the polar night. And they apparently lived there year-round, without migrating for the winter. This further demonstrates how flexible and resilient they were, making their sudden end all the more puzzling. Toward the end of the Cretaceous, from the outside, everything seemed to be going on as usual. Dinosaurs still dominated the land, pterosaurs roamed the skies, and mosasaurs reigned over the seas. But on closer inspection, the world was already beginning to change, slowly. Here and there, signs of cooling appeared. The climate became more capricious. Oxygen levels in the oceans dropped. Plankton became poorer, and with them, fish. The diversity of some groups was gradually declining. This wasn't a collapse, but rather a strain, like a string stretched to its breaking point. It still resonated, but it only took one sharp tug. The world was still full of life, but it had become fragile. That's why what happened next is so striking. The dinosaurs didn't fall from weakness. Everything seemed stable, and then the cosmos intervened. It happened in an instant, without warning. An asteroid some 10, maybe 12 kilometers across, a veritable flying mountain, smashed out of the sky toward Earth. It slammed into the shallow, warm sea where today Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula lies, at a speed of tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. The impact generated the energy of hundreds of millions of the most powerful explosions known to humanity. At the point of impact, the ocean instantly evaporated, and rocks melted tens of kilometers deep, leaving a crater some 180 kilometers wide that remains buried beneath sediment to this day. Worse, the rocks were rich in sulfur, and the impact sent monstrous volumes of sulfur dioxide into the air. Fiery whirlwinds swept across the planet, giant waves crashed onto distant shores, and seismic tremors are estimated to have circled the globe more than once. But the worst blow was yet to come. Dust and soot thrown into the sky blocked out the sun for weeks, even months, and darkness descended on the planet. Without light, photosynthesis stopped, and plants were the first to die, undermining the entire pyramid of life. Herbivores then began to starve, as giants like sauropods required vast amounts of food, which was no longer available. The predators that hunted them followed suit. In the seas, everything happened even faster. Plankton died, food chains collapsed, and mosasaurs and the famous ammonites, which had survived many catastrophes before, disappeared. The sky, too, became empty, from which the pterosaurs vanished. The dinosaur tracks in the rock layers end abruptly, and at the very boundary of these layers lies a thin layer of clay containing the rare metal iridium, the very same cosmic visitor that signed the death knell of an entire era. And yet, this wasn't the end of life as such. It was merely the end of one very specific life. In the desolate, charred world, only the most unpretentious survived. Small animals hiding in burrows, a few birds, and humble inhabitants of the water and soil. Those same inconspicuous mammals who had huddled in the shadow of giants for millions of years suddenly found themselves masters of a planet where there was no longer anything to fear. Before them lay an empty world with many open niches, and they rapidly began to occupy them, initiating a new round of evolution. Tens of millions of years would pass, the descendants of these animals would fill the earth, and eventually, we would emerge. Thus, the demise of the dinosaurs cleared the way for mammals, and, oddly enough, each of us owes our existence to that ancient catastrophe. The memory of this vanished world lay buried for tens of millions of years, until humans began digging. It all began in the 19th century, an era of factories, mines, and railroads, when the earth continually opened up and revealed strange bones. In the early 1940s, the English scientist Richard Owen coined a name for these mysterious beasts, meaning terrible lizards, and thus the word dinosaurs was born. At first, they were completely misrepresented. One of the first dinosaurs to be restored had a thumb claw mistakenly placed on its nose, mistaken for a horn. Later, in America, a veritable bone war broke out between two ambitious scientists, racing to unearth new species. And thanks to their passion, science was enriched by dozens of discoveries. And in 1980, the Alvarez father and son discovered that very same iridium layer, and were the first to declare that the dinosaurs had been wiped out by an impact from space. The crater was soon found, and the whole picture finally came together. Thus ends a story that lasted an unimaginably long time. For over 150 million years, dinosaurs ruled the land, sky, and sea, surviving extinctions, inhabiting deserts, forests, and even the polar cold, hunting in packs and brooding. And yet, even the most powerful world can collapse in an instant if fate itself turns against it. But the dinosaurs didn't disappear completely. Their direct descendants still sing outside our windows in the mornings. For every bird is, in essence, a living dinosaur, and their demise paved the way for our ancestors. So, in a sense, we owe them our very existence. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to the channel, and in the comments, let us know, what creature or era from Earth's past would you like to hear about next?